about possibly just turning our cameras off,
That's
just
fine.
to save on bandwidth, once we get going, if that's okay with everyone.
That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and shut mine down right now, but I'd like to introduce, I have Jennifer Jones is with us today. She is a watershed outreach associate with the Illinois Extension based out of Effingham. She serves the Imbros River Shed and the Little Wabash River Shed, both of which are phosphorus priority watersheds in the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Strategy. Jennifer provides education to farmers, landowners, and the general public on strategies to reduce nutrient loss and to improve water quality and soil health. She holds a bachelor's degree in natural resources and environmental science from the University of Illinois Extension and a master's degree in agronomy from Purdue University. Mary Fischer is also joining us today. She is a horticulture educator with Illinois Extension based out of Effingham. She serves Clay, Effingham, Fayette, and Jasper counties. Mary provides education opportunities and training to master gardeners, master naturalists, schools, preschools, daycares, assisted living facilities, libraries, and the general public on horticultural and environmental issues. She holds a bachelor's degree in paralegal studies from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, a master's degree in plant, soil, and agricultural systems from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, and a doctorate in agricultural science from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Welcome, Mary and Jennifer, to help us. This is our Unit 23, which is serving Bond, Clinton, Washington, and Jefferson and Marion counties. We welcome you today, and we're glad that you can kind of give us some information about the Purdue Rainscaping program. I can't spit it out today. And how you guys have implemented this program at the Effingham Extension location. So welcome, ladies, and we thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Are you still able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, hello, everyone. Mary and I are excited to be here today, and we're going to split this presentation and kind of be talking together about the workshop that we implemented this fall here in Effingham. So we will go ahead and get started with that. Okay, I always like to set the stage a little bit for why we're talking about water quality and rain gardens and rainscaping. And so to kind of set that stage, we implement rainscaping or rain gardens as one way to help us deal with stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces. So impervious surfaces are those hard surfaces like roofs, sidewalks, streets, parking lots, where water cannot soak through. So whenever it hits those hard surfaces, it's going to run off and typically drain into like a storm drain that we might see on the street. And it's not allowing the water to infiltrate where it lands. So this image on the left, you can see that it's kind of depicting different scenarios of infiltration. So the top far left part of the picture is showing natural ground cover. So whenever we receive precipitation on natural ground cover, we see about 50% of that infiltrate directly into the soil. Only 10% is running off. Whereas if we progress throughout this image, you can see as the urban population or buildings increase, we're seeing less infiltration and more runoff. So when we get to a very high density urban setting, we see about 55% of that precipitation run off immediately, and that's mostly going into storm drains. So that's what stormwater is. It's that precipitation from rain or snow that's being collected on those impervious surfaces and then redirected into a storm drain to be removed. And so what we'd rather see is to have that stormwater absorbed into soil where it can be filtered naturally through the soil, and then it replenishes our aquifers, or from the soil, it can then flow into streams and rivers. And so some common water quality challenges that we can experience in urban areas because of having that excess amount of storm water running off are listed here. So these are just a few of the problems that we can see. So of course, downstream flooding can occur whenever we have lots of water coming off an urban area and entering the streams. We also can have stream bank erosion. So whenever lots of water is flowing into a stream, the banks may not be able to sustain and support that amount of water, so they get eroded. And then having that soil erosion occur can increase turbidity in the water, so the cloudiness of the water, which can then affect the aquatic life living in the streams and kind of cause some habitat destruction for them. Some other challenges, like especially in big urban areas, are having a combined storm and sanitary sewer system that can overflow. So some bigger cities have this where their sewer and their stormwater go into the same place to get treated. But if they receive too much water at one time, they will back up and flood into a stream without being treated. So that's called an overflow event. And obviously we don't want that, because we'd have a mixture of sewer water and stormwater flooding directly into our streams without being treated. So a lot of cities are trying to update their systems in order to combat that issue. We can, of course, have infrastructure damage with flooding. So you can see in these images, flooding roads and houses. And then contaminated streams, rivers, and coastal waters are kind of the long-term impacts from these water quality challenges that we see. Okay, and so green infrastructure is kind of the umbrella term that we use for things like rain gardens, bioswales, rain barrels, downspout disconnections, things like that. And so green infrastructure is an overall approach that we can take to manage that stormwater and to help us mitigate flooding. And it allows that water to then soak into the ground where it lands or evaporate, rather than running off and leading to those flooding and other water quality issues. So green infrastructure actually reduces and treats stormwater at its source using vegetation, soils, and other elements to mimic nature. And so this provides a lot of different benefits, not only environmental, but also it can be aesthetically pleasing to have these beautiful landscapes within urban areas. And it does provide the economic benefits as well, because we are reducing some of those impacts from the water quality challenges that we might experience. Okay, so now that the stage is set, we're going to talk specifically about rain gardens today. And so a rain garden is, in this picture on the left, you can kind of see this illustration of a rain garden. Rain gardens are a garden with a depression in the middle. So they're basically like a bowl or a basin where they have sloping sides that lead down to a more depressed center. They are designed with a purpose to catch rainwater and runoff. So you can see in this picture, they are catching the water that's probably coming off the roof of this house through the downspout, and it's the water is moving towards the rain garden where it will then collect. And so in native or in rain gardens, we use native plants in order to help water infiltrate down into the soil, and then also the plants as they grow will be taking up water as well. And so this picture on the right is showing kind of a side angle view of a rain garden. So again, you can see it's got the sloping sides down to a basin in the middle. And so whenever we're choosing plants for a rain garden, we need plants in the basin that can survive average to moist soil, because they will be at times in saturated soil with withstanding water. And so they need to be able to sustain that just for about 24 hours. On the sloping sides, we need average soil moisture, so plants that can handle being pretty wet at times, but also being more dry. And then on the top, we'll have average to dry soil plants. So they shouldn't be experiencing lots of standing water. So they might actually be more dry at times. So they need to be able to survive those conditions. So rain gardens have lots of benefits. They increase water infiltration and reduce pollutants. So again, they allow the water to soak into the soil where it lands, and then it's naturally filtered through the soil. Rain gardens absorb about 30% more water than the equivalent area of lawn. So typical lawn grass has pretty shallow roots. We keep it mowed short typically, so it's not able to root deeply or take up a lot of water. And so a rain garden is able to absorb a lot more water than a natural lawn would. They also provide wildlife habitat. So plenty of native plants are used in a rain garden that are flowering. And then there's grasses and different species as well that attract pollinators and just insects and different things that can sustain the wildlife habitat. And then also a rain garden does reduce maintenance. So once it's established, it doesn't really take a lot to maintain it. You're not having to mow it or do anything like you would with a lawn. But initially, rain gardens are not maintenance free, of course. And we'll talk more about that with our experience here in Effingham. And of course, they need time to get established before they can really be maintenance free. And this picture is actually a rain garden at the Babbler Educational Research Farm that Extension and 4-H owns over sort of in the Waterloo area. And so it's a nice established rain garden. It's been there for a few years now. Okay, and so we talked about the Purdue Extension Rainscaping Education Program. And so this program is actually imported from Purdue Extension by Illinois Extension. So we are now operating this program here in Illinois. And some of our staff here in Extension received the Train the Trainer education at the end of 2020. And so from that, some of us here in Extension are now able to host this program. So in 2021, we here in Effingham County, Mary and I ran a rainscaping program. There was one completed in Jackson County as well and in Champaign County. And several more people at Illinois Extension will be going through the Train the Trainer program next month so that we'll be able to host more of these rainscaping programs throughout the state in 2022, which is really exciting. And so this rainscaping program includes 15 hours of instruction. And so participants learn how to site, size, select plants, and maintain a rain garden. And then they also actually get a hands-on rain garden build experience. So in Effingham, we did a hybrid program this fall where we had our first 4 sessions were over Zoom. And we were able to bring in different extension speakers from around the state who have been trained to talk about the different topics. And it was really nice to be able, like, even though we're in Effingham, we were able to have an educator who's all the way up in Northwest Illinois present because we did it over Zoom. So it was really nice to get a diverse set of speakers for our program. And then our final session was an in-person rain garden build. So we did that here at our Effingham office, and we're about to share a lot more about that experience. But also I just want to note that Eliana Brown is a water quality specialist up on campus at University of Illinois, and she works for Extension as well. And she is leading this, the Purdue Rainscaping Program implementation in Illinois. So we are really grateful for Eliana's leadership and that she was able to help bring this program to Illinois. So if you have any questions about the Rainscaping program, we can always connect you with Eliana as well. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about our experience here in Effingham with the Rainscaping program. And actually, we're going to be focusing more on the implementation side of the rain garden. So all the steps that we took to be able to do our rain garden build here. And so to start off with, we decided that we wanted to host a Rainscaping program in Effingham this fall. So we had hosted it in September and October. But first, we needed to determine a suitable location for our rain garden. So we thought it would be really nice to have one here at our office in Effingham so that we would be able to maintain the rain garden more easily, because especially the first year is important for maintenance. And then we also thought it would be really nice for future programming opportunities. If we have a rain garden right outside our door, we can host programs here about rain gardens and native plants and water quality, and be able to just walk right outside our building and host people. So we were really excited about that. And initially, so we were looking at this spot here as a site. So hopefully you can see my mouse. I'm kind of outlining this grassy area that's surrounded by concrete. And this is the entrance to our building here. We do have some landscaping back here around the windows, which Mary and I are hoping to turn into a pollinator garden next year, but this spot would be too close to the building because we don't want water collecting right close to the foundation of a building. So we were looking at this spot right here instead because it's a little bit further removed from the building, and we just thought it would look really nice. And we also have this tree here that's kind of sad looking, so we thought maybe something like a rain garden would look really nice here. And so this picture on the right, you can kind of see we're looking out the other way towards our parking lot. And so if you can tell from the picture, we do have a slight downslope here. So our building is sitting up a little bit higher, and then it slopes down into the parking lot, which is what you want for a rain garden. You want the water to be able to flow downhill and then collect into the rain garden. So we were excited about this, but upon further investigation and thinking, we realized that our downspouts, so here, our downspouts from the building actually go underneath this concrete sidewalk and they drain out into the parking lot. So the downspouts were not draining directly into this area, and we could have made it work, but it would have required chiseling out some of the sidewalk here and putting in a drain in order to reroute the storm or the drain pipe into this rain garden area. So we decided that that probably wasn't the best thing for right now because we didn't want to have to undertake kind of removing some of the sidewalk and getting that put in. And it's really important to make sure that you're actually capturing rainwater from a hard surface. And so we decided against this location at that point in time. So instead, we went with a different location just on the other side of our parking lot. So this picture on the right kind of shows there's our building again with the door. Here's our original idea, but instead we decided to go with this area where you can see the yellow flags. They're outlining this section that we selected for our rain garden. So we decided to go with this because our parking lot is downsloping towards this area. We actually have a kind of like ditch here that floods regularly and it holds water for a long time. And so we thought that our water from our parking lot was probably contributing to this issue here of like long-term standing water. And so we thought this would be a nice location for rain garden in order to collect some of our runoff and allow it to infiltrate here rather than running through the yard into this ditch here. So we did decide to go with this location, and it's about a 6-foot by 40-foot section of yard here. So once we determined that this might be a potential site for us, the next step was to complete a percolation test, and this is also known as an infiltration test. So we needed to do this to ensure that the soil at this location would allow the water in the rain garden to infiltrate within 24 hours. So this is really important to prevent standing water from becoming mosquito breeding grounds. So mosquitoes typically lay eggs in standing water if it's been there for longer than 24 hours, and then they're able to breed. So we don't want that for any rain garden spot. And so to conduct the percolation test, we needed to dig a hole that was about 8 inches deep and about 8 inches wide. And then you first fill the hole with water and allow it to soak in order to saturate the soil. Because if you have just like bone dry soil, it might make your test results inaccurate. So it's important to saturate it first. And so once we had saturated the hole and it had drained out, we then filled the hole back up with water. And so then you mark the top line of the water with something like a pencil. I used a pencil. You could use like a ruler like this image or a nail, whatever it takes to mark the top line of the water. And then once you do that, you start a timer and you go out. It depends on your soil type. So we knew our soil here was pretty clay. So we knew that it was going to take a while for the water to drain out. But if you knew that you had sandy soil, you might want to go out maybe like every 15 minutes or 30 minutes to measure how much the water level has dropped. But for us, our soil was clay, so we went out about once an hour to measure. And so once I poured the water in and marked the level line, I started a timer, and then I went out once an hour and measured how much the water level had dropped. So using a ruler, you just measure from the line that you marked how much the water line had gone down. And so you should repeat this at least every 3 to 4 hours, but I ended up doing ours. I did it during a work day and I was just curious. So I did it for 8 hours, and you wouldn't have to do it that long, but I just wanted to see because ours was draining very slowly. And so the picture on the left here is actually from our test that I did. And so after the first hour, the water had only dropped 1/4 of an inch. And I was thinking, oh my, this might be, I don't know how this is going to work. And it actually ended up dropping about 1/4 of an inch every hour. And so our average was about 0.23 inches per hour. And so what you do from there is you multiply 0.23. So that was our infiltration rate by 24 hours. And that gets us the depth that our rain garden should be. So 0.23 times 24 was about 6 inches. So based off of our infiltration rate, we learned that our rain garden should only be 6 inches deep if we wanted it to drain within 24 hours. So hopefully you're able to follow that. Basically, yeah, 6 inches deep was our maximum depth. So that's what we went with from our percolation test. Okay, so the next step, we figured out, okay, the site will work. The soil will drain fast enough if we only do 6 inches deep. So perfect. The next thing was to get Julie to come out, of course, and mark the site and make sure we didn't have any lines that might cause problems for us. So we got the okay. And the next thing was trying to figure out an excavation person to come and excavate our rain garden bed for us. And we were lucky enough that we had a 4-H family actually come and donate their time to excavate this for us. So the Josh and Amy Tegler family, Josh here is the one operating the backhoe, and he actually worked for the city of Effingham and was able to come over, and he did this in about 30 minutes. It was really awesome. So you can see this is him just rolling up the grass and then digging out the bed here. Okay, and so this is what the rain garden bed looked like afterwards. So the picture on the left, you can see kind of we have that indention in the middle that where the sides slope down into the rain garden bed. And the picture on the right, you can see, so we actually had Josh scrape off. So we had him scrape off the grass from the parking lot here. And then we also had him scrape off grass here. So like I said earlier, our rain garden is only about 6 feet across, but we had him scrape about 8 feet just because we didn't want a narrow strip of grass left here to have to mow. It would be really inconvenient. So we just had him strip off all the grass here. And one thing that we found whenever he did the excavation was this side of the rain garden actually ended up a little bit deeper than this side. And so that led to a little bit of water standing issues. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Mary now and let her pick up there.
Thanks, Jennifer. So as Jennifer said, you can see we had a problem. So our water was standing at the far end. So after a couple of days, it really started looking better until it rained again. And then we were right back where we were. So it's like, well, what are we going to do? Also, you'll see some mulch right there. That particular pile of mulch is a double grind mulch, which is much finer. It helps to hold the moisture better. That's what goes down into the planting bed itself. It will help keep moisture at the roots of the plants. Again, it's much finer. One thing about mulch in that is you have to make sure you get it from a reputable company. I'm sure everyone's heard of jumping worms, and there have been some jumping worms that have been found in mulch. When you see some of the next pictures, you'll see we actually have another thing of mulch, because one thing I wanted to explain is the reason why we also had Josh scrape off the grass that's right next to the parking lot. So that would be this area right in here was, we often have a lot of trucks come and they'll back in and fall down their tailgate, and then they'll walk behind to take something out of their truck. We didn't want them stepping in our rain garden, so we basically kept a couple of feet past the concrete area. So if anybody walked in there, they're not going to be right in the middle of our rain garden. So we did do this with some forethought. Jennifer, can you advance it, please? So here was our problem. When we're the day before we're getting ready to plant, we still had water. So what we did was basically we trenched a little area in just to drain off some of that water. So it wouldn't be just sitting there when we plant it the next day. So it was still a little bit wet there the day we were planting. We went ahead, not nearly this much. The water really drained off really well. And all we did was just, we dug a little trench, we just folded it over. And then when the next day we folded it back over, so you would never know it was even there. This is not exactly what you want to do with the rain garden, because this is you're sort of defeating the whole purpose of why you have the rain garden if you're draining the water away from it. So, I mean, there's a couple of things that we are going to try that Eliana suggested. The first one, Jennifer, could you advance the slide? Oh, well, never mind, go back. What Eliana suggested is, like Jennifer was saying, our parking lot is slanted, so it slopes down toward this rain garden. But these areas right between these bumpers, water has a tendency just to rush through. It's called sheeting. So it just moves like a sheet of water downhill. So what we're going to do, so we have mulch, and you'll see this in the later pictures. We have mulch all along this area. We also have a big pile of gravel left over from landscaping around the building, and we are going to put rock between the concrete and the edge of our garden. We're going to rock all of this to break up that sheeting action. You'll see why in just a few minutes. That's one solution we're going to try first. The other solution is we're going to have to dig this end out, and we'll have to, of course, dig up all the plants, and we'll have to put some engineered soil. So the engineered soil is made of compost, sand, and native soil. So it's a mixture of the different ones. It will help it drain quicker. So we're hoping not to have to go there. When I did my PhD research, one thing, it was a quote from Albert Einstein that I put in my paper. It said, if we knew what we were doing, it wouldn't be called research. And that's kind of like with the rain gardens. You know, sometimes you put it in with the best of intentions, and then you find out, uh-oh, we've got a problem. Well, then you have to correct the problem. So that's where we are right now. We're getting ready to, like I said, we're going to be lining this couple of feet all along in here with some gravel to break up that sheeting action, and then we're going to assess how it is after it rains. Another thing that Jennifer brought out was, you know, we're getting these rain events. Well, whether you believe in climate change or not, the rain events are becoming more intense, but they're spread out. So instead of getting multiple rainstorms where you may get a ½ inch of rain or something, we may be getting fewer that could be 2 inches or more of rain. And so, you know, sometimes the soil has dried enough that it takes a while for that, the soil to be able to absorb that water. It just moves all through too quickly. And that's one reason why the rain gardens are very important, is because it can act as a basin to hold the water. Okay, Jennifer. So this is just a real simple design that I drew for our garden. Um, I wanted it to be simple enough that anybody could look at it and understand where plants are supposed to go. This is not necessarily what you would have done in a landscape design class. Usually they have a legend off to the side and they have little arrows. But because our master gardeners aren't landscape designers, I decided just to write the names of the plants where they were so they could understand it. There are also different colors, so it helps them stand out a little bit better. When you see the lines going through, it means that there's a grouping of those plants. The ones that look like stars are grasses. The ones like up here are deciduous. So this is like your wild white indigos. Then down in here, you have swamp milkweed. You have New England asters. So here's the ones that are up top that can tolerate being a little bit more dry. The swamp milkweed can stand much more water. We have prairie dropseed, which is also tolerant of having some wet feet. We've got some Joe Pye weed out here, some lobelia, some sweet flag irises, which again can tolerate more water. So these are our basin plants. We also went with the palm sedge, which is also a little bit more water tolerant. Okay, Jennifer. So when it gets ready to planting, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Most people go, oh, well, we have seeds, or they've often heard of plugs that you can order, or you can just order plants. What we did, we opted for the plants. Now, the plants are more expensive than the plugs. They're also very easy to establish because they already have a nice root system. You kind of get that instant gratification because you can see it. Plugs, often when you get the plugs, there's not much there. They also have a root system, so they do establish easier. They're much cheaper than plants. Now, the garden that Austin put in Jackson County, they used plugs. On average, their plugs were about 50 cents a piece. We used plants. Our plants were about $5 a piece. So we actually were able to use less plants than they were plugs because we had a better idea of how quickly ours would fill in. The reason you don't use seed is because it can wash away. And you'll see one of the reasons why we would have been really thrilled we didn't use seed in just a minute. Now, seed is really good for a pollinator garden like Jennifer was showing you. We want to put in a pollinator garden because we don't like our landscaping. And often we have to go out there and pull our own weeds. So we want something that is much more beneficial. So we are going to be pulling out a lot of it. Now, the nice thing about that is a lot of the plants that we have used in our rain garden can also be used in a pollinator garden. So that's a real benefit. Also, when you do pollinator gardens, pretty much like a rain garden, you're going to want to provide pollinators with food sources throughout the growing season. So you want to have things that are going to come in early, some that will bloom in the middle of the season, some that'll bloom late, so you can invite more pollinators to come as well. These pollinators are also going to help your rain garden as well. And, they can stop, they can, get a drink if they want, they can rest. So it's a real nice benefit to have. When I was at SIU working on my master's, we also put in a rain garden because we had a terrible flooding issue. And we put in more of a dry creek bed, which is one type of a rain garden you can put in. Now, the rain garden that they put in Jackson County was 18 inches deep, but they also had to put in engineered soil. And I went to look at it, and it was absolutely beautiful. And it's only been in there about 2.5 years. So they had big swamp mallows, which are like a hibiscus. It was really, really pretty. Okay, Jennifer. So here are some of our native plants. There's columbine and our grasses. Some of our plants had already started to go dormant, which we knew they would. So that was okay. We purchased these plants from someone who grows down near my house. I actually live outside of Carbondale, and that's all they do are native plants. So they're a real good resource for us. And they had pretty much everything that we had on our shopping list. They did have some things that they didn't raise, but they made substitutions that were acceptable. So we were really happy and we were pleased with our plant choices. Okay, Jennifer. So here we are. You can see our water issue right in the middle because it had just rained. And you can also see now we have 2 loads of mulch. So we used the coarser grind mulch. So that's what Rita is spreading out here. So that's the one that went right at the edge, and it goes all the way around the rain garden. Here, Tasha's kind of just walking on it just to kind of make sure it stays where we want it to stay. And then we just started filling it in. Now, in the center of the garden is where we're going to put that very finely double ground mulch. So everybody showed up a little bit before 9 o'clock and we got to work. One thing that it was suggested that we use is an inoculum. So it's a mycorrhizae, which is, it has a nice relationship with roots. It helps roots to be more efficient, and it will form like little nodules on the roots, which allow the roots to uptake nutrients in that much better. So that was something that we purchased in a 50-pound bag. We put the inoculum in with each plant to stimulate the growth of that plant. I know personally, I did that this year in my own garden at home. I bought some plants that they had marked them down and they looked pretty darn sorry, to be honest. But I took them home and I watered them. I gave them a week Miracle Grow solution. I put the inoculum in each planting hole and they grew into beautiful plants and were quite prolific in producing fruit. So I had eggplants and peppers. So here we are spreading that mulch out. Okay, Jennifer. So here in the top view to the right, you can see we have our bed all laid out. You can see the differences between the mulch. So that darker mulch is the one that's in the center, and then the lighter mulch is around the edge. And then we started going out and putting the plants out according to that planting schedule. And then everyone just pitched in and started planting and digging. And I will tell you, this lady right here, that is the one you want. Her name's Linda. She is a planting machine. She really just was zooming through there. Some of us were a little bit pokier, but if you want stuff done quick, call Linda. Have Linda come and help you. So here I laid the plants out, and then we were coming along and planting them. Now that the garden design that you saw, that's actually over 40 inches long. So I made each one of, it was four little squares equaled 1 inch, 1 inch equaled 1 foot. so I could spread it out so you could have a better idea of where the plants went. And then we had already knew where the center of this garden was, so it made it a lot easier to put out the plants. Okay, Jennifer. Oh, so here we are. There's Jennifer, and there's Rita, and there's Tasha, and there's me, and there's Barbara, and there's Linda. So, and it only took us about 2.5 hours to do all of that. Now, you can look here and see we did not plant the middle section. And because of all the water that was standing at the end, we opted to wait until it was a little bit drier. We didn't want to stress the plants out by, choking them and planting them in water. So we opted to wait. So one other thing I want to point out is you can see that over in this corner here, you can just see the edge of a solar array. So what Eliana has talked to us about and what we are thinking about doing is creating a pollinator garden under those solar arrays. For one thing, then nobody's going to have to go in there and mow. For another thing, it would be another avenue to provide habitat for pollinators. So we're really looking forward to that. One other thing is you can see that big satellite dish over here. What we are planning on doing is having a competition with some high schools, like their art departments, their FFAs, their 4-H, to create a design and paint that dish, which is about 12 feet, representing the rain garden, and then we'll turn it 180. So it will become the sign for our rain garden. So we are kind of excited about that. Next slide, please. So here's what we were talking about. This is before we planted the center. What we had noticed is we got a heavy rain. You can see how the water has just cut through and just basically washed some of the mulch away. And this is on the far right end, and the next picture is the far left end. So we realized we had a problem. That's when I talked to Eliana, and she said, yeah, it's probably just the sheeting of the water. Again, because these rain events here don't dump just a little water, it dumps a lot of water. And it seems that when it comes across a hard surface, it just picks up momentum. So we are going to try to correct this by first putting down the rock. Next slide, Jennifer. Oh, so we are here at the end of this. We appreciate your taking your time to come and listen to our presentation, and we would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
When do you find is a better time to get one of these established? Would it be, late summer, early spring?
Well, I believe that would depend on where you are. Now, I know the one that was put in Jackson County was put in the spring. So they did it, I think, right around May. Isn't that correct, Jennifer? I think it went around in May. Our garden and the one up in Champaign, we went in at the same time this year. So again, that's going to just depend on when you have the time, you can get everyone together and have everyone on the same page. I don't think it's dependent on a particular time of year. Probably in the middle of the summer is not when you'd want to do it, though, because you have to make sure it has water. Yeah. Spring or fall, I would say, would probably be your best bet.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think for us in Effingham, we set a cutoff of about mid-October would be when we would not want to plant after that. So we did our installation on October 9th, and I think that was a pretty good date for us in this part of the state.
This is Patricia. I'm in Lake County, Illinois, and we're doing a rain garden at the extension office. My question is whether you are doing any or plan to do any cleanup in the fall.
I'm sure this next fall we will be. I'm sure there's probably things, since we've seen this water issue come up, we're going to have to keep an eye on it. So in spring, we can see, did we lose any plants because the roots were just basically smothered, and whether or not we're going to have to replace some plants. But like Jennifer pointed out, a rain garden is not maintenance free. It does require maintenance. The garden that Jennifer showed you at the Babbler farm out in Waterloo, that was only 3 years old. So you can see they can go from something that looks like ours to this massive jungle in 3 years. And again, you're going to have to maintain them. You're going to have to see, did you have anything that's invasive that's trying to come up in the garden? You're going to have to pull it out. You're also going to have to make sure that whoever is assisting you on your garden is aware of what's the plant and what's a weed. Sometimes what I would do with my children is I would just let it get big enough so they could really see, oh, that's a weed, and then let them pull those. But this particular garden that Jennifer's showing you right now, that was, I talked to the person who installed it and they said it was only 3 years old. And on one end, it was very deep, probably 18 to 24 inches. So it was more like a bioswale than a typical rain garden.
Are there any other questions for the ladies while we have them with us today? I didn't see any in the chat box, so.
Are there any resources, or would the extension office with any of the master gardeners be able to assist if somebody had a place at their home or somewhere in the community that they wanted to come out to maybe assess whether or not a site would be appropriate?
I would think if they've gone through the training, that's a distinct possibility. The homeowner could possibly, or the homeowner with the help of a master gardener could do like the infiltration test to see if it's a good spot. We are hoping, our master gardeners were so thrilled with the class, they already are looking at other places and are already checking to see where else can we put in another one. So they were really excited. They learned a lot. If you can take one, ours was not that expensive to take. We offered it for only like $10. So they're certainly affordable. You get a wealth of knowledge. You get a really nice book. It's called the Blue Thumb Rain Garden Book, I think is the name of it. Let's see, I've got it right here. Oh, it's called The Blue Thumb Guide to Rain Gardens. This is put out, I believe, well, Rusty Schmidt, Dan Shaw, and David Dodds put this together. This is the book that Purdue uses. This is the one that we used in our course as well. Has lots of information. So you could always get in touch with, a local extension office to see if they're going to be offering any rainscaping classes. Like I said, we're hoping to offer another one in the spring.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm in Centralia, Illinois, so not too terribly far from Effingham.
Oh yeah, you're just
yeah. I didn't know if our local extension office, if any of them have taken those. I think there's her last name's Luking. Maybe is it?
Oh
Chris?
yeah, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't know if she had taken the course or not. Or
I'm actually in the train the trainer, going to be in the upcoming session that they're hosting here December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So I'll be
Awesome.
having some more information soon.
Perfect. That's great.
So, are you thinking about putting one in at your home or business?
Yeah, I actually have a couple locations at my home, but we've also been in talks with, so I work for SSM Health. It's our healthcare system in Centralia and Mount Vernon. And we have 2 hospitals at in each city. And so we're looking at doing a pollinator garden potentially at both, but the possibility of even doing a rain garden has come up. Obviously there's a lot of work that goes into some of those projects. So we just want to kind of start small, but definitely at my personal home, I have some spots that I've been thinking about it, but just not knowing where to actually get started with it. Done a
Right.
lot of reading up on it, but I want to make sure when I do it, it's done properly.
Yeah.
And, keep in touch with Chris or Jennifer or I, and we can let you know about any upcoming classes. Jennifer and I had also discussed the possibility of doing a rain garden at like a healthcare facility. There's a lot of benefit to these types of gardens. Prior to my master's research, which was done on actually a green roof, I researched horticulture therapy for a year. And I'm still very interested in it, but it was how healing just being able to see plants is.
Absolutely.
So that would be a
Absolutely.
really nice benefit to your facilities.
I
Yeah.
completely agree. Yeah, I used to work on our behavioral health unit, and the outdoor space that patients could go out to was very much, it reminded me, not that I've ever been in prison, but what a prison courtyard might look like. And I always wanted to turn that space into a much greener space because of the healing properties that I know that nature just has for us as human beings. So I completely agree with that.
And,
And
and go ahead, Jennifer.
oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, Darren, I would encourage you to have like the landscaping staff at your facility go through a training. Like if Chris offers a training in the spring, maybe it would be a perfect opportunity for them to learn about how to maintain the rain garden as well. Because like
Yeah.
we said, yeah, the first year is really important. So getting someone on your staff, that's exactly what this training is for them to learn how to maintain it as well. And that would be a really great opportunity too.
Sure. That's a great point. Thank you.
Great. There's one more in the chat. Gail had asked, the Master Gardeners planted a rain garden at the Cross in Effingham. Is it still there?
Wow, I didn't know that there was one there, Gail. That's awesome. We actually weren't sure if there were any others in Effingham County because Mary and I've only been here for about 3.5 years, and Mary's been here for about a year or a little more. So we don't have a lot of historical knowledge, I guess. But it's possible it's still there.
That's something to check out too. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the heads up. That's good to know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the thing. Some of us, we don't know what we don't know.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions for everyone that's joined us today? It says, Robin says, maybe you can start a rain garden registry like the pollinator pockets. Absolutely. That's
Yep.
something that as the training continues, that might be a good, something to put on the radar, especially for Ileana. So
I think they actually are trying to develop something like that, if I remember
cool.
correctly. So yeah, that's a great idea. And Chris, do you want me to go ahead and share this video still?
Oh, sure, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to give some background on it?
Yeah, so we have our firm service agency, which is next to us, the extension office, and they volunteer with some outreach programs. And so this is Stephanie and Rebecca, and they kind of doing an activity for us today to partner up.
Okay, sorry, I need to share my screen too. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
All right.
Hi, I'd like to welcome you today for our activity. This is Stephanie and Rebecca from the Farm Service Agency in Marion County, and they're going to demonstrate our activity today for us. Ladies?
Okay, so right here we are going to simulate what happens when it rains in an area where it's mostly hard surfaces, mostly developed, like in a town area where you've got mostly sidewalks, roads, not a whole lot of grass, not a whole lot of vegetation. We're going to start with a gentle rain. And you can see there's some potholes here. And we can see what happens there. All right. And then we're also going to simulate what happens when we have a downpour. But let's look and see. You can see that different areas, there's more rain than others where the runoff is happening. All right, now let's see a downpour. So you can really see the water runoff, how it's really, really concentrated in areas where there's potholes. Okay. And then the next one we're going to do is an area that has grass and rocks and some housing, but not nearly as much as the pavement. The first one will be a gentle rainfall. Okay. And then, so you can definitely see with the grass and the rocks, it definitely had less than the pavement did, because there's less runoff. And then if we do a downpour, there's still some runoff, but it's significantly less than what it was with the pavement.
Okay. And do we want to pull the tops off and we'll kind of show them how much was collected? Where you had potholes, you had collection, and then how much?
With the grass, it was a lot less. And you can see how it's still dripping from the grass, that it collected it and held it longer.
Okay. Thank you, ladies, for helping demonstrate today for us.
No problem. No problem.
And that's a simple activity. That is the rain to drain from Purdue, or I'm sorry, from Penn State Extension. And it was more of a activity that can be taken out to work with youth and really show how they can slow the flow of the water. Even as you've seen, it kind of ran off onto the sides. It's just a good illustration to take and kind of take along with you if you're going to do an activity, to even working with youth or one of those assisted living centers where they can really see what's going on. So we thought that was kind of a good demonstration to have. Well, if there's no further questions, thank you, Mary and Jennifer, for joining us today and giving us some information. Does anyone have any further questions before we let them go?
This was great information. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And you're getting a few more thank you for very informative. So thank you, ladies, again for your time today. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing how your rain garden grows and continues on throughout the season.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us, Chris. Thank y'all for coming.
Yep,
Thank
thank
you.
you.